Hey guys, thanks for joining me for an episode of Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at Evil High Priest. This is a newer game by Petersen Games. It is a 2 to 5 player game that takes roughly an hour to an hour and a half to play, and it is a competitive game, so each of the players is working against the other players to have the most points to be the overall winner at the end of the game. And this is a worker placement game, so you're going to be placing your meeples around the board, gathering resources, and to use those resources to smash the Elder Signs. So in the game itself, you are playing a priest that is controlling a band of cultists that is trying to bring back their great old one. So you're going to do this by collecting treasure, blood, magic, and spell books to destroy the Elder Signs. And the first player to destroy the 13th Elder Sign will end the game, and the player will total up their points, and the one that has the most points at the end there will be the overall winner and be named the Evil High Priest by their dark god as they ascend. So my opinions of this game so far, this is one I would recommend if you like worker placement games. It has great artwork and production value within the game as you would come to expect from a Petersen game. It also has a lot of additional content, so once you play this game a couple times, if you want to expand on it, there's a couple of expansions, as well as some miniatures and things to really flesh out the game as well. But the core set is a great set. It has a number of things in it to keep you going for quite a while. You have one cult board with 2 gods on it right off the bat, Cthulhu, which you guys will see in this video, and the Black Goat. So other than that, like I said, this is definitely one I would recommend. The artwork on this is very good. I really like the theme of it, of course, being H.P. Lovecraft. They do a great job of really capturing that within the game, including the artwork and all the different things you're going to be using throughout the game. So that being said, the only downside to this that I was really kind of disappointed in was that in the rulebook it shows these really cool custom dice. Those are not included in the game. I think this was a Kickstarter a while back, and they probably came with that, and you might be able to purchase them from Petersen Games, I'm not sure. But that was the only thing that kind of was disappointing, as the rulebook does show them, but unfortunately in the box there are not. So anyways, like I said, that's a very, very small thing. Other than that, if this is a game that you're interested in, I definitely recommend checking it out. And as always, if you guys enjoy these videos, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel, as it will help me to continue to grow and bring these great games to you guys. And if you want to get notifications anytime I release new videos, please ring that bell as well. And let's go ahead and head to the table, and I'll teach you guys how to play. There are 2 sets of cards included in the game. The first is the monster cards, which in the base set are all going to be exactly the same, and will have a defense of 5, which you'll use during raids. Then if you're playing the Cthulhu board, you'll also have the Shagoff, and I'll show you guys where that'll be placed. And he's going to provide a defense of 10, and there's also other features on the Cthulhu board he'll be able to be used for. Then we have the chamber cards, which you'll be able to place those in your Sanctum when you acquire them. Each chamber card is going to have a name. Some of them will have special abilities, and then each of them is going to have a defense and a number of spots for your resources, depending upon the types of resources. So with the chamber cards, the white circles represent all 5 of the different types of resources, as opposed to every other white circle in the game that only represents the 3 core resources. And some of these are only going to be able to hold certain types of resources versus others that can hold any of the types. There are 5 different resources you're going to be using throughout the core game, which are treasure, blood, magic, spellbooks, and elder signs. Each of these is going to count as 1 of that type, and then there's also bigger tokens that can be counted as 3 of the 3 core types, which are treasure, blood, and magic again. I'm also going to be using my customized trays from Crystal Fortress in this video, and these are some of my favorite new things. You can customize these to any size that you need. There's all kinds of dividers that you can punch in there and separate into different slots based on what you're playing. And I'll also include a link down below for their website, so if you guys are interested, go and check them out, pick some up. And I also have a video that'll cover all the different features of these as well, and I'll have a link for that as well. Moving over to the player boards, each player is going to receive 1 main board, which is going to have locations at the top for the monsters that you'll collect throughout the game, and these are the 3 layers. Then going down the side here is a quick reference for the turn and all the victory points for the different tokens at the end of the game. Over here we have the priest-only area with 3 actions for our priest meeple, And we also have a section for the priest card, which is part of an expansion. So if you're only playing the core game, don't worry about this. This is a single per game card that is part of the expansions. Then, like I said, the priest meeple is the only one that can be placed here, and he has 3 different action slots that he can go into and activate those abilities. And just like with the rest of the boards, any resources that are listed in the dotted red lines, you must spend in order to activate that ability to receive any resources or cultists that are in the solid blue circle. And some of these are also going to have conditions, like summoning the monster you can only do after the first raid, and only if you don't have any monsters in any of the layers. And then finally over here on this side of the board, we have our cultist pool. So at the beginning of each turn, you'll place all of your cultists that you have in there, and priest. And then we also have one other slot, which is the escape, which you can place a priest in there to gain a resource or a treasure. And then finally at the bottom is again, quick reference to all the different tokens that are in the game and what the different icons mean. The second board each player is going to receive is a Sanctum board. At the beginning of the game, when you set this board up, each player is going to place 4 of their cultists on the asylum space. And then as players gain resources, they're going to place them in the exposed resources section. And then each player is also going to place a marker here for the raid strength down at the 0. And as players acquire chamber cards, they're going to place them in the chambers, and they can put them in any chamber they want. And then during raids, the raid is going to start here and work its way through the chambers until the raid is reduced to 0. I'm going to cover this more during that section. And each time a person places a new chamber in their sanctum, they're able to rearrange all the resources that are on any of their previous chambers and on their exposed resources section, so they can start placing those resources in chambers that can hold them. There are 4 main boards that the players are going to interact with throughout the game, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at each one of these and talk about setup for it as well. So this first one here, if you're only playing with the core game, I would say this is an optional one because you aren't going to have any investigators, so you won't even use this top row, and this isn't going to come into play either. The monster section is also not going to come into play as you only have 1 monster type, so there's no need to shuffle them up and put them out, as when players acquire them, they're simply going to draw the top monster from the deck. So with that, you can just place this off to the side. If you're using the monster, this board, you'll place the monsters over here, and you don't really need to put them out. And then with the chamber cards, go ahead and shuffle those up. And again, if you're using this board, you can place them over here, and then you reveal the first 3 across the 3 chamber spots. And each time a player acquires one of these, you're going to go ahead and immediately replace that spot with a new chamber card. And each one of these is going to have a discard section. But like I said, if you don't want to use this board, you can simply set both the monster deck and chamber deck off to the side to save you some room, and then reveal the first 3 chamber cards. The second board we're going to look at is the Towns board. This board is going to have 14 locations on it, 13 if you're not playing a 5-player game, as the second sulk location will not be used. Each of these locations is going to have a name, and then as you go down the board, they're going to have different icons on them. Some locations will have the separated red circles on the top here, as you can see here, and these are the resources you must spend in order to activate this location and receive any resources that are listed in the solid blue circles or blue squares listed at the bottom of the location. Now each location can only have 1 cultist placed on it at any time, and when a cultist is placed on there, again he has to spend any resources that are required to gain any resources that are listed at the bottom. And you cannot place a cultist on a location if you don't have the resources to spend in order to gain resources. You cannot place a cultist there simply to block other players from doing that. And some of the locations at the bottom here also have the white circles, which on this board they represent the 3 main resources, which are treasure, blood, and magic. So you can use any of those in any combination to activate this particular space. Finally, we have the sulk space, which one cultist can be placed there. And at the end of the action phase, that cultist can be placed on any other space except for Providence, and follow that space's directions, even if another cultist is already there. That is the benefit of the sulk space. The third board we're going to look at is the Rituals board, which is going to start the game flipped over, and then once the first investigator raid takes place, you're going to go ahead and flip this board over to its active side. Once flipped over, there's going to be 5 starting locations on this board that players can place their cultists. In order to place a cultist in a starting location, they have to spend 2 treasure, And then during the preparation phase, those cultists will be able to be moved to the next location along that ritual's track. And then they will immediately gain any resources in that location. Now, I'm going to cover this more in detail during the preparation phase when I cover that. But one thing is that any cultists that are placed here, you'll basically lose for one additional round or potentially 3 rounds by placing them in this final track. So you will not be able to place them from round to round until they are completed their ritual. The final board we're going to look at is the cult board. At the beginning of the game, you're going to choose which cult board you want to use, which in the base game there are 2, and each of these is for a different elder god. So we have Cthulhu, and on the back side here we have the black goat, as you guys can see. In some of the expansions, they're also going to add additional cult boards with the other gods. So from there, for setup, you're going to go ahead and place out the 13 elder signs in each of the Shattered Elder Sign locations. For the Cthulhu board, you're also going to place the Deep One track token on the 0 spot and the Shoggoth down at the bottom in his location. And each of the other cult boards will have special setup instructions as well that you'll follow. From there, let's go ahead and go through a breakdown of the board. Each of the cult boards is going to have 13 action spaces on it, which are going to have the elder signs on them. Each of these locations is going to be restricted until the elder sign in the previous location has been shattered. So for example, at the beginning of the game, the only location the players can go to is this first location. In order to go to a location, they'll place a cultist there and pay the resources that are listed in the dotted red circles to gain any resources that are listed in the solid blue sections. So for example, this one you'd have to spend 2 magic resources to gain the elder sign, so you'd shatter the elder sign and gain it as a resource. And then that would open access to the arrows following that space. So for example, with this one, it would open up these 4 additional spaces for the players to go to. Now, once those spaces are shattered, then the player can follow suit, and it just follows the arrow. So for example, if another player went here and shattered this one, then immediately this one would open up. You don't have to shatter these 4 in order to open up the rest of them. Now, some of the locations are also going to have special actions that must be handled as well. So for example, with this one, when this one is resolved, you'll also move the Deep One track down 1. And then it also has a picture of a gun, which means an investigator raid must be resolved as well. And based on the number of guns in the space is the number of d6 dice that you'll roll. And based on that value is the strength of the raid. Now, some of the different action spaces are also going to have a bonus action space that will be unlocked once the elder sign is shattered there. And throughout the rest of the game, players can place meeples in these bonus action spaces, just like any other action space, pay the costs above to receive any resources below. And again, when a cultist resolves the first part of that action space, when they shatter it, they can immediately move over to that other action space and spend those resources to gain those additional ones. Now, a player does not have to, and if they don't, then this space is considered locked while a player is in this space. The spaces that do not have the bonus action spaces, such as this one, are single use. So once the elder sign is shattered here, no player can place a meeple in that space again for the rest of the game. And like I said, some of these bonus action spaces will give you access to bonus monsters or different abilities and whatnot as well. For board setup, first off, like I already talked about, you're going to place out all your boards, choose your cult board, and place out your 13 elder signs, and then follow any other special instructions for that cult board. Again, the ritual board will start on the flip side. Go ahead and place out your chamber and monster cards. For most games, you can use this if you want to. Like I said, I'm not going to, just to save some space. So I have my monster deck and chamber deck with the 3 chambers revealed for this game. As this is a core setup, I don't have to worry about any of the monsters or anything. They're all the same. Finally, for player setup, each player will receive their 2 boards that we already talked about. And then each player will place their priest and 2 cultists in the cultist pool, their 4 other cultists in the asylum, their track for their raid strength, and then finally we're going to go ahead and choose 1 player to be the first player. So I'll go ahead and have the purple player here be our starting player, and then each player is going to get a number of treasure based on their player order. So with us playing a 2-player game, our first player will receive 1 treasure as he is the first, And then our second player will receive 2 treasure as he is the second player. And if we had a third player, he would receive 3, and the fourth player would receive 4 in clockwise order. And each of these will go in the exposed resources section of the player boards. Evil High Priest is played over an undefined number of rounds, with each round broken into 2 phases, the action phase and preparation phase. This is going to continue until the last Elder Sign is removed from the cult board, and at that point the game immediately ends and each player figures out their final score to determine the overall winner. Before moving into the game, the last thing I want to cover is the costs and rewards. And I've already covered some of this, so just kind of bear with me on some of these. So first off, again, anytime you place a cultist in a space that has cost requirements, which are listed with the little dotted red circles, you must do that first. And those are taken either from your exposed resources or from your chambers and placed back in the general pool. Anytime you gain resources listed on the bottom in the solid blue areas, you're going to take them from the pool and either place them in your exposed resource area or chambers if you have them already. And then if spaces require you to sacrifice an acolyte, they can be taken from anywhere on the board except for your asylum, and you cannot take it or you cannot use your priest for this. You can do it even from spaces with rituals. When you do this, you cannot use the acolyte that activated this space, so if we placed one here, he could not be the one that sacrificed himself in order to meet that space's requirements. And when you sacrifice a cultist, you're going to place them either in the asylum. If the asylum has 4 cultists in it already, then you're simply going to place him in the escape space. And the same goes true when you gain a cultist. So spaces that give you a cultist, you're going to take from the asylum and place in the escape space. Now, if your asylum is empty, as you don't have any cultists there, you cannot gain additional cultists at that point. The first phase in each turn is the action phase. Starting with the first player and proceeding in a clockwise manner around the table, each player is going to take a turn, placing one of their cultists or priests in one of the action spaces, and then resolving that space. From there, then it's going to move on to the next player to do the same thing, and this is going to continue going around the table until all players have used up all of their cultist pools. So let's go ahead and take a look at the example of this. We have the first player here who can place one of his cultists or his priest in one of his priest spots or out in the board. So let's go ahead and start off. He'll go ahead and place his little cultist up here to gain 1 magic, which will be placed in his exposed resources, as he doesn't have any chambers yet. From there, then we're going to move over to the next player. So he's going to go ahead and move up here to Kingsport to gain 3 treasure, which will also be placed over here. Moving back over to our first player, again, he can go ahead and do the same thing. And he's going to go ahead and place his up in the Skulking Cultist area. Moving over to our blue player, he is going to go ahead and chant to receive a chamber. He'll go ahead and take one of the ones that's revealed, so he'll do a false wall, and you can place it in any one of your chamber slots, so he's going to go ahead and place it down here. And then anytime you place a chamber, you can go ahead and place any resources you want in that chamber, and he's not going to go ahead and do that right now, and then we'll immediately reveal a new chamber. From there, we're going to move back over to our purple player to go. So he is going to go ahead and place his over here to gain some more resources. So he'll get a treasure and a blood. And then our player over here is going to go ahead and go down here and spend his 5 treasure to gain 3 magic. And he could gain 3 single tokens or 1 token that's worth 3 points. Even with those tokens, they still count as 3 resources, so it would not take up 1 slot, it would take up all 3 in his chamber if he chose to do that. So at this point, all of our players have played all their cultists, so we're ready to move into the last part of the action phase, which is resolving the skulk, if any player placed a cultist there. So our player did, so he's going to go ahead and place him, and he'll go ahead and place him there to gain a 2nd magic. From here, we're ready to move on to the preparation phase. The second phase in a turn is a preparation phase, and you're going to follow the steps in order. First off, cultists on the ritual board space are going to advance to the next space on the ritual, and I went ahead and flipped that over so I can show you guys how this works. So each cultist that is on a space is going to slide over to the next space in that ritual, and then gain the rewards that are listed on that space immediately. If a cultist starts in the last space of a ritual, then they're going to be returned to the cultist pool. And for this bottom track, the cultist is just going to continue moving until he reaches that last space, just like anybody else. From there, then we're going to remove all cultists from their current locations and return them to their owning player's pool. Cultists performing rituals that are on the asylum spaces or trapped by a monster are going to stay where they're at. So let's go ahead and move these guys back now so that we can do this properly. And then for the regular players, we're going to go ahead and return all the cultists that are out on the board to their pools. Any player with a monster card that have any abilities are going to be triggered during the preparation phase can go ahead and activate those abilities now. And again, that is for expansions. The core game does not have any of that. Players may rearrange their resources between their chambers and their exposed resources spaces. An investigator raid is going to be triggered when a cult board lock space with one or more gun icons is unlocked. All players are going to be raided, not just the triggering player, and to resolve an investigator raid, you're going to roll a number of dice indicated by the number of gun icons, and then you're going to total the results to find the raid strength. You're also going to take into account any modifiers to the number of dice or the total of the results, but you must roll at least one die and can never have a raid strength of higher than 18 regardless of bonuses. Each player is going to set their personal raid strength marker on their Sanctum board to the number determined. From this point on, each player is going to handle their own raid strength, and it will have no impact on the other player's raid strengths. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that we had a raid here with a strength of 2, and we rolled the dice, and they came up with 10. At this point, then, our players would each set our raid strength markers to 10 on their Sanctums, and then we're ready to proceed into each of the players resolving their effects. So first off, each Sanctum has its own defense based on the number of cultists that are in the asylum and on the escape spaces. For each cultist there, you're going to reduce that raid strength by 1. So with our purple player here, he has 4, so he's going to bring his down to 6, and same with the blue player, he brings his down to 6 as well. From there, then the player can sacrifice cultists that are on the board to the asylum or the escape space to reduce that raid strength by a further 2 points. Now, you cannot sacrifice cultists that are already in the asylum, and any cultists that you do sacrifice will not add the bonus to that first defense. So let's go ahead and say that our purple player decides to do that. He'll go ahead and send his 1 to the escape space to reduce by 2. Then if any players have monsters, they can also choose to sacrifice the monsters to reduce that raid strength again by the monster's defensive rating. And then there also are certain special spaces or monsters or whatnot that players can do based on the boards to reduce it further. At that point, if a player has any remaining strength, then they're going to lose all of their exposed resources. And then the raid will proceed from chamber to chamber in their Sanctum, following the arrows, and each chamber that they go into will reduce that strength by a further amount if it has it, and then if there's any remaining after that, then any resources that are in that chamber are going to be lost, and it'll continue on to the chamber until either the resource strength, the raid strength is reduced to 0, or the player does not have any resources remaining. And again, each player has to handle their board separately, and one player does not have any impact on the other player. And when resolving raid strength, the priest is not allowed to be sacrificed for that purpose. The end of the game is going to be triggered when the last elder sign has been broken. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We're going to go ahead and say that our purple player here, it's his turn. He's going to go ahead and place his cultist in here, and then he has to spend a blood, a magic, and a spell book. So we'll go ahead and do that. And that will shatter the elder sign. So then he can go ahead and place the elder sign, and then we're going to have to resolve a 3-gun raid. So let's go ahead and roll that. All right, so we got a total of 12 points, so each of our players will mark that on their tracks. And then we can go ahead and start by doing the defense. So the purple player has 2 in there, so he'll reduce his by 2, same with the blue player. And then they can go ahead and start spending their resources. So the purple player is going to go, he does not want to lose anything. He's got a lot in here that he can potentially lose. So he's going to go ahead and sacrifice a couple of his cultists to the asylum, and that'll reduce it by 2 points each. He has a monster that he'll go ahead and sacrifice as well to reduce that by 5, and he has 1 point remaining, so let's go ahead and sacrifice our last cultist there, and that'll bring his down to 0. And our other player over here has 10 remaining. He's just going to go ahead and get rid of the Shagoff, and that will reduce his all the way down to 0 as well. And the Shagoff is actually stored off of the player board. It wouldn't take up a layer of space, but I just went ahead and threw it in there just to have it up there. So at this point, then the game is over, and the players are going to total up their scores. So again, according to each player's board, you're going to receive 10 victory points for each sign you have. So our purple player over here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's got 60 points there. Then each player is going to receive 5 points for each magic they have. So that's 65. He gets 2 victory points for every magic. So that's 67. 1 for each blood, so that's 70. And then the player that has the most treasure will receive 5 points. So our player over here definitely has more than our purple player, so he has 70 points total. And then the players are not going to receive any other bonus points for monsters, cultists, or chambers. So then moving over to our blue player, let's total his up real quick. So he's got 4, 5 for 50, 2 more for 60. He got the most treasure for 65, and then he's got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So that's 75 points for him. So our blue player would be the winner of this game. Now, if players tie for the highest amounts, then they will share that victory. Well, I hope you guys found that video helpful. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video and leave me feedback on it. And if you enjoy these videos, please consider that like button and subscribing to my channel, as will help me to continue to grow and bring these great games to you guys. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.